Today in its 2005 Ford Excursion, we're going to review and install the Firestone Ride-Rite Air Helper Springs, part number F2251. This is what the airbags look like when they're installed. In this case, we're looking at the driver's side. And with the kit, you get the brackets that bolt to the side of a frame that use existing holes. Now below air spring has brackets that attach to the axle and spring pack, and all the hardware is included for that as well. Then on top you can see our airline fitting and our airline that comes with the kit and runs towards the back of our vehicle. And at the end, there's a bracket that's optional if you want to use it or not. A simple little device that goes onto the bottom edge of your hitch or top edge, whatever you'd like, and you get your air valves connected to it, left and right side. All right, now a few good reasons to have airbags put onto your Excursion, or any truck for that matter, is that for different loads that you're carrying. For example, in this case here, we're using a cargo carrier with a load in the back. You don't want anything on the inside of your vehicle, and it brings it down somewhat. The airbags, of course, bring the truck back up to level and it handles better. This cargo carrier could also be a motorcycle carrier, maxing out the tongue weight of the hitch as well. It'd be a good idea to have that back there when you have a motorcycle back there. And also, if you have a trailer behind your vehicle, and even though it's within the weight capacity of a hitch, even though it might bring the back end down a little bit, it's good to have the airbags on there as long as you don't exceed the weight of your hitch. It'll bring your truck back up to level, and even your headlights at night will be shining in the right direction. Before we get started with install, let's go ahead and get a measurement of our stock truck height first. Measure from the bottom down to the bottom of the wheel, to the ground, to the top of the fender well. We're going to call it at 41 inches. All right, now we've got some weight in the back of our truck. Let's go ahead and check out our measurement a second time. Okay, original measurement here, 41 inches. Now we're down to 39.5. So we have a difference of about 1.5 inches, and that pretty much maxes out the tongue weight on our hitch as well with the weight we put in the back. Now for weight in the back, let's go ahead and take a test drive, and we can see how suspension works under load. All right, let's go ahead and go over bumps course, and we'll check out how the suspension works underneath. We'll be going over some alternating bumps that will simulate uneven pavement. And you can see how the suspension's articulating right now as we go over the bumps. Then we'll go over a series of speed bumps. You can see how the axle works that way. All right, now we'll go do a little slalom course, and we'll see how suspension works and how the vehicle handles under load. So I go back and forth. I can feel the weight back there, kind of pushing around, and the steering, it's not as good as stock or unloaded. With our airbags fully installed in our Excursion, we aired them up and we brought our truck back up to its original stock height. And for reference, we use 60 pounds of pressure in each bag to bring it back up. Now we'll go ahead and take our test course and see how it rides again this time, and see how the suspension works with the airbags in place. All right, let's go ahead and go back over alternating speed bumps and see how it looks. And I'll go over our regular speed bumps next. All right, let's go ahead and do our slalom course. See how the truck handles going left and right. And I can already tell it handles much better than before. It actually tracks better. It doesn't roll as much. Much more confident with the load in the back. Now we'll go ahead and show you how we install them on our Excursion. To start off our install, we need to go underneath the truck and we need to remove the factory jout stop, which is located right above the axle, right here. To remove this, there's a nut on top. Now if you can, spray it down with some penetrant, because these are always pretty much a bear to remove. They get rusted together and it takes a lot of effort to remove them. We'll need a 15mm socket, and a flex angle ratchet will work pretty good too. And let's go ahead and just remove it. Once it gets loosened so much, we'll probably have to grab this and hold it in place while we remove the nut. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and take it apart and put this away because this will not be reinstalled. This oval hole here, we got these brake lines in the way, so we need to loosen this up. And on these holders here, I'm just gonna move them up 1 notch right here. Now you may or may not have to do that, but all I did was take a screwdriver and I just, when it was together, I just kind of worked it in right here and just kind of popped it loose like that. Got one on this side and one going towards the front of the truck here. And then we'll take our line, probably have to pop it loose from the bracket in this original spot on both sides and move it up one. Once we have it moved up into place, we'll go ahead and snap these back in. And that should give us enough room for our hardware to eventually go through this hole. Now moving to the outside of the frame here, still on the driver's side, we got the parking brake cable and there's a holder for that held in by this bolt. I gotta remove this bolt. So I'll be using a 14mm socket to do that with. We will not need this bolt again. Now, this is another may not have to do step, but I'm going to enlarge this out, hole to a 25/64. Basically one size over 3/8, so it makes it a little bit easier to line up the hardware that will go through eventually. And of course, be careful with the lines right next to it. Now, at this point, we can go ahead and start installing the airbags. We'll take all our pieces here and put it together as one unit, and then we'll put it up inside the vehicle. Now we're going to start off with our driver's side first. We're going to take this bracket here, and with this carriage bolt, we're going to install it from the bottom where it fits in this pocket to the top. Then we're going to take these two holes and line it with the studs. Make sure we have our opening here for our airline connection. We'll go ahead and take 2 lock nuts that come with the kit. We'll get them started. And we'll tighten them down with a 9/16 wrench. Now they actually have a torque specification on the bolts, so we'll use a torque wrench to tighten down as needed. Next up, our airline fitting. That'll thread in. And we'll run it down until it catches the orange sealant, and then tighten it down 1.5 turns. 1.5, 2.5. Might want to double check to make sure all the sealants engaged. If not, maybe a half turn more just in case. But it really doesn't require that much tightness really. Now working with the bottom side of our spring, we'll go ahead and attach our bottom bracket here. It'll sit like this oval slot against the threaded hole here. And this bolt with some thread lock on it will go through. We'll just line them up and thread them together. We're going to keep it loose at first. That way we can adjust it and make sure this is flat and this is flat. And also centered left to right. Okay, we'll go ahead and tighten down this bolt too. And with this bolt and the rest of our hardware we've used so far, we've always used a 9/16 socket. Now this will rotate on you, so be kind of careful when you tighten this down. Now we'll take this bracket and we're going to bolt it to these two holes right here. You want to make sure the tabs with square holes will face towards the ground, and also these two tabs will fit in between. And we'll take our short bolts and install them just like that. And we'll install more lock nuts on the inside. Okay, we'll go ahead and tighten down our hardware. Now at this point, you want to lift up one side of the truck to give us more working room to put the whole assembly in there. Every little bit really helps. I'm using a pole jack here, of course I'm on lift, but you could use a a regular hydraulic jack and a jack stand to achieve the same purpose. One thing I want to point out, which is easier to see now before we put it up in there, is you see this bolt that we installed earlier and left alone. This actually goes through the hole in the frame where a jout stop used to be located at. So when we put this into place, this is going to line it up at the edge of the frame, and this will line up with 2 holes on the outside of the frame. Go ahead and put it into place. This part will definitely require a little bit of patience. As I put it into place, you'll notice that this part of the spring will fit through the opening that was built into the brackets. And eventually this will slide up against the spring pack. Okay, well, let's get it started on the axle. When you put this into place, make sure the parking brake cable's on the outside of the plate too. If it gets inside here, it kind of get in the way of lining things up. So make sure that's all clear. And then line up your hardware. Line that up. Our bolt hole. This is really hard to see, so you probably want to put a flashlight up in there to help guide it into place. We can go ahead and take our flange nut and run it into that bolt that went through the frame. And we'll snug that up until it lines up our holes. Now we'll go ahead and put our hardware on the side right here. And remember our brake line clip right here? That's going to get the new hardware. Another 3/8 bolt and a flat washer. They'll go through the bracket and we'll push our bolt back in. All right, and we'll take our flange nut, and this all goes on the inside here. Just to get it started. And then we'll do the same thing on the bottom. We'll use another bolt just like this. You can see why we need to move those lines out of the way. This side will get the large flat washer this time. And then we'll add one more flange nut. Okay, now we've got these loosely installed. We'll go ahead and tighten these down, then torque them down as described in the instructions, and we'll make sure we're clear of these lines as well. All right, now we'll work on our hardware for our lower bracket. We're going to start off this clamp right here. We're going to go on the outside of the spring pack and U-bolts. Run our threads over this edge and out this hole. We'll do that on both sides. 2 more lock nuts, 1 on each side. There's long 3/8 carriage bolts. We'll drop down through the square right here on the inside of our line. There'll be 1 for each side. Take our clamp, put it into place. You'll notice the holes are offset, so you may need that to accommodate for the U-bolt right there. Let's put that into place and loosely install 2 more lock nuts. Now with our hardware loosely installed on the bottom, we'll go ahead and snug it down and then torque it. We'll do the clamp one side at a time, and you notice this whole assembly will slide together. And let's tighten them down just until they touch for now. Make sure they're even on both sides. Okay. Make sure that this doesn't interfere with your brake line here, so you may have to flex it a little bit. Make sure it gets out of the way. Okay, now let's go ahead and torque these down. All right, for everything tightened down our airbags, next we go ahead and move on to our airline tubing. Now before we install it into the air fitting, it's a good idea to cut it off flush using a tubing cutter. I'm using part number F9009. Let's go ahead and take our line, we'll line it up and push it until it stops, and then we'll push it in one more time. Give it a pull back, make sure it's engaged, and we'll take the rest of our line and run it towards the back. We just basically went up and over frame, underneath these lines here, and behind this body mount right here, made sure we stay away from the suspension. and just work your way back down to the edge of our hitch right here. Now we have one side done, our driver's side. We'll go ahead and repeat the same process over on the passenger side. However, it'll be a little bit easier on that side since we don't have to worry about any lines going on the inside edge of the passenger frame. Although the exhaust will be in the way a little bit. With both sides complete, we'll go ahead and work with our air fittings. This comes with a simple bracket that's held in place by those two long zip ties. Typically it'll go on the bottom edge of a hitch. So we'll go ahead and mount our airline fittings, disassemble them. We'll take one of the flat washers, we'll put it on the end of a valve, run it through, put another one on top, and then the nut. Then we can snug this down using a 13mm socket. Do the same thing for this side. Now we'll go ahead and find a location for our bracket. Like I said, typically on the hitch, so you got your choice of like this, the lines are on the bottom, or you put it on top and the lines are hidden. Testing it with an air chuck, seemed like it kind of got in the way with this wire harness here. So I think it makes things a little bit easier to work with over time. We'll just go ahead and leave it like that. Again, it's personal preference how you run these. Now, if you didn't want to use the bracket, you need to drill it out into the bumper or some other part. Or in this case, since this factory hitch has a shield on here, you just drill two 5/16 holes. It worked just fine like that as well. For us, we'll go ahead and use a bracket. Now, if you're working with the factory hitch, the zip ties that come with it are going to be a little too short. So I just actually put two of them together and ran them through. Just like before, make sure your lines are squared off, push it in until it stops, and push one more time. One down, one to go. Okay, now we'll go ahead and zip tie our lines up, make sure we're safe and secure and out of the way. All right, now let's go ahead and add some air pressure to it and try them out. Now I'm gonna go ahead and start checking for leaks. I'm just using a mixture of dishwashing detergent and water. And we'll just spray the valves, look for any bubbles. Once we're satisfied with no tiny little bubbles, like that right there, that's the leak. So we just need to take it apart and do it one more time. And that'll finish it for Firestone Ride-Rite Air Helper Springs, part number F2251 on this 2005 Ford Excursion.
Click the link below to shop, learn more, or visit us at etrailer.com.